Welcome back to the Marcus Milione podcast. I am, in fact, your host, Marcus Milione, but instead of a solo podcast today, we are bringing on a guest. He might look pretty familiar. He is my brother. His name is Sean, and I would like to let him introduce himself because he can probably do it much better than I can.
Okay, so yes, I'm Sean. I'm Marcus's brother. We've been living together in the city for close to 2 years now. I probably know most, if not everything, about Marcus, so this will be a good insight into, the workings of our life and how we live together and our dynamic. I'm 23, about to turn 24. I graduated, 2 or 3 years ago now? But yeah.
Yeah, all right. So I think the best thing for us to do to give people kind of a full scope of our relationship is to go back to when we were super young, right? So like kids, obviously, before high school, that period where you kind of first start having memories until like middle school-ish. So Sean and I have always been extremely close. Going back to when we were very young, I remember we would obviously do pretty much everything together, whether it was, playing outside after school, waking up, like just getting on each other's nerves, like nonstop.
Yeah.
But that was like a relationship that took time to form, right? So when we were younger, we both still are pretty competitive people.
Yeah.
And so anytime it was like time to play, it always got super competitive. So, for example, we would play, different sports outside. Sean would have his friend, I would have my friend. It would usually be, like 2v2 sports. And these events or like play dates would get so heated that we'd end up probably fighting, right? If we had my mom here, she would probably agree. Most of the time it was fighting. A lot of the times there were like fists flying, just because I don't think either of us liked losing, and especially losing to somebody who, in my case, would be younger than me. Sean, trying to prove himself to me, being the older sibling, and and that's always been like a dynamic in our relationship, and it's changed obviously since we've gotten older and we've matured a bit and kind of understood our places in the world. But I think if we go back to those times where we were playing and we were arguing, um, it forced us to grow and become even closer, because our fight, like how would you say our fights ended? Because I feel like every time we got into an actual physical altercation over like an event outside, like say we were playing basketball like one-on-one, anytime we got into like a physical fight, 5 minutes later we were like,
Yeah.
hey, you want to play the computer?
Yeah, that was the thing between Marcus and I is like, first you have to understand that everything I did when I was younger, it was pretty much just copying what Marcus did. I didn't have, my own real ideas. Like I just kind of followed how any normal younger sibling would, Marcus's footsteps. So I'm sure he found that annoying. But I also tried to win and tried to beat him at what he was doing, because in my head it didn't make sense that, why would he be better at it than me? He's only like, I didn't understand that, he did have those physical, like the physical,
The 2 year advantage.
yeah. But yeah, no, we would get into it, and it was never like, it would seem so bad while it was going on. My mom and my
Especially
dad,
to our parents.
yeah, both our parents were like, I mean, every time we fought, it was just like, they're never gonna be close. They hate each other. Blah blah blah. But as Marcus was saying, 5 minutes later, we stop, and then we get bored, and then like because we're not hanging out with each other, and so we'll want to go and like play video games or play another sport outside, and we'll be like, no, it's fine, like we won't fight this time, trust us. Like that was just it got way too heated, blah blah blah. So yeah, it was taxing on my parents. It was bad for us, but at the same time, like it really did like form our relationship.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty recent, like revelation that my mom kind of came out to Sean and I both and said when we were younger and going into middle school, she didn't really think Sean and I would be ever close, like up into even adulthood, which is kind of crazy to hear because, as bad as our fights were, where we were screaming and fighting, in my head it was always like, as soon as this is over, like nothing changed. It's never gotten to the point where we stopped talking to each other, maybe more than 12 hours.
Yeah. I would say 12 hours a day max. We just would get too bored. Like that's all we had. We had our friends, but like when our friends weren't over, what were we supposed to do? we needed we needed each other in order to like have a good time and like play outside. And I mean, nobody wants to play alone. So,
but I think, there's not a whole lot to talk about when we were that kid age, but I think that dynamic right there, that like ultra competitive, super like, strong will, strong minded, plays right into kind of a topic I want to talk about going into high school. Since I was 2 years older, I kind of like, we had Kelly, three years older.
4 years.
Well, 4 for you, 3 for me. And she did her high school thing, but she was in a phase of her life where we weren't as close with her. So what she was going through in high school, we weren't really like experiencing it together.
I don't know, Kelly and I at one point were maybe closer than me and you, because when we would fight so often, like I would just get sick of it, and like Kelly, I mean, we don't fight with Kelly. Kelly's like very, she's very calm. She's very just like, she could talk about it. So yeah, no, I got pretty close with Kelly. But obviously when she got into high school, it's 4-year difference. Like I'm sure she could only hang out with me for so long without getting annoyed. So
yeah. But I mean, people listening are probably thinking like all we did was fight the whole time. But it leads me back to this point. So I'm entering high school, right? High school is like a pretty paramount time in your life where you are figuring out who you are, even though, you're still living with your parents and you're still kind of guided by them. But this dynamic between my brother and I played into pretty much my entire existence ever since, 8th grade until even to today. So I always knew that Sean was watching me in everything that I did, and anything that I did, it automatically gave him an excuse to do it. And so that's why in high school and even, into college, I would very rarely, drink alcohol, go party. I was always very dedicated to the gym, and I knew deep down, not only did I enjoy it for myself, but I knew deep down that he was watching, and as soon as I slip up, he's going to do the same thing. So it was like something I always had in the back of my mind.
I think it was 100% that. And Marks and I have had discussions where, if he had not been such a good kid, with a great head on his shoulders, I think both of our futures would look very different than they are right now. It was also like, if Marcus slipped up, Marcus slips up, it's not like the worst thing in the world. I would find it as an excuse to be like, oh, that's okay all the time then, which is just very dumb. And I was still maturing. Like I still very much had this weird outlook on life. but that's what it was. I mean, that's why Marcus kind of wore this burden on his shoulders that was just kind of a little bit, I'm sure, stressful for him. But
Nah. So, I mean, yes and no. Like, because at the end of the day, it only forced me to make the right decision that I knew was right. Because the time you get into trouble when you're in high school and you slip up and make decisions that can sometimes affect your long-term progression of life or your trajectory is when you make a decision that you know you shouldn't be doing. It's usually just everybody around you is doing the same thing. And it was very easy for me to just say no or remove myself from the situation because I knew that if I did, in fact, go through with this and it blew up in my face and it got back to my parents or I got in trouble with like authority figures, Sean was going to hear about it and then he was going to be like, all right, well, at least I can do it probably once. I can at least give it a shot.
yeah, it's so bad. But I mean, I'm glad we recognize it now, and I'm glad we made it out with no issues. But it was, I can't imagine what it was like from your side, because I think if the roles were reversed and you were me and I was you, I think it would be very different. But I guess we'll never know.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't difficult, and I'm actually kind of grateful for it because if I didn't, the scene I think back to in my head is we have that family home video where I'm trying to dive to the bottom of the pool when I'm like maybe 6 or 7, and I'm like so
You would think
obsessed.
You would think something's wrong with Marcus. He was so obsessed with it. It was
because
strange.
it was because I was told I cannot dive to the bottom of that pool and retrieve the little torpedo thing.
Yeah, I think my grandpa was egging him on.
It was David, our uncle.
Oh yeah, our uncle, and he was like, "You can't dive to the bottom of the pool and grab that. Like, there's no way."
And it was working me up so badly that it was like I was just like so locked in on this torpedo. I had to do it, and I was like, I know I can do it. And I was just freaking out. And then the video camera pans to the side, and it's Sean standing at the side of the pool with his hands crossed, resting on his little like pot belly that he had when he was a little kid, just watching me.
Yeah.
And I think that sums up our relationship perfectly, especially in our years where we were growing the most, is like I just always knew that you were watching and I could not mess up. So, but it was also good for me because it like kept me so dedicated to my craft. Like I have to do this the right way so that Sean also does it the right way. And maybe later in life we can see some form of success.
Yeah. And I think with you, it's good that you were the one to deal with that because, I mean, ultimately you were very driven. You were weirdly driven from a young age. Like a lot of kids, at least in my experience, I feel like, don't necessarily like look forward to just like grinding out hours on something or doing something that requires a lot of time and you're not going to be good at it for a long time. Marcus was just like so obsessed with that process that I just kind of watched and I was like, I mean, like it looks like he doesn't enjoy it, but at the same time, it looks like he really does enjoy it. And then also watching and seeing him get better at something was great for me because
I feel like it made you like fall in love with it too.
Yeah, it's like the gym. I mean,
that's what I wanted to go into next. Like when we started training and we both kind of just fell in love with it. Like I think I started training a little bit earlier than you.
You were like
I was like 16.
Kelly, besides Kelly, she was the first one to go to our gym back home. Marcus followed shortly after.
Yeah.
And then I remember asking my parents if I could go because like the group classes looked fun. It looked like just a new way to like exert my energy
outside of rec sports. This is also at this time for both Sean and I is when we really started to kind of hone our craft and set our sights on college lacrosse.
Yeah.
Because we both kind of Well, I knew in my mind like it was Division One or bust. Like I would consider myself a partial failure if I didn't get there because that's all I had to care about in high school. And I don't know if it was that way for you, but you saw, what it was, what I was doing in the gym, and you kind of then we just became training partners. Probably when I was 17, and then you were a little bit younger.
Yeah, I mean, it started out as like since we were so young, and he was 2 years older. When we first started working out at the gym back home, we got placed into different classes. There were different levels to the classes.
By age. It was by age back
By
then.
age, and also like if you were,
Advanced or
Yeah.
had been training, yeah.
and Marcus was at a higher class, like a better class. So we didn't necessarily start training, but the classes would be maybe like 30 minutes, an hour apart. So we'd be at the gym at the same time, and that's kind of how it formed because a lot of the times after the gym we would like to get like extra work in and just kind of like be like, why didn't I do that exercise right? Like, why did that feel weird? Like,
Or when we were trying to get our hand cleans up,
yeah, and
and we would just sit there and just rep out as many times as we
It
could.
was so, looking back on it was so counterproductive because we didn't take a rest day. We did hand cleans every single day.
Yeah.
But yeah, every day after the gym, we would go to a platform and just literally try to max out every single day.
Yeah. So kind of how we were told that an excellent determinant of overall athleticism are explosive kind of lifts like the hang clean or stuff like that. So I took it in my head as I need to be able to do so much weight on this exercise that like I'm a freak. And then it followed suit with Sean. And for us too, when we were really growing up playing sports and lifting to be athletes, our two favorite lifts were probably the hang clean and the rear elevated split squat.
Yeah.
And it got to the
It's so
point where
strange.
we trained those things so hard that, by the time we both hit college athletics, they were two lifts that one, the form on the hang clean is one of the most important things. And I remember being in college and seeing kids that had never done it before. And just one, they couldn't do any weight. And two, their form was terrible.
Yeah.
And I remember
which is-
thanking myself for just hammering that back home with you.
Yeah. It's just surprising. You would think a lot of people at the Division I level would know proper form, proper, all of that stuff. But there are cases where people are just very good at a sport and like just not so good at like the lifting or the other part, running part of the program. And I mean, if it works for them, it works for them. But yeah, no.
But that wasn't the case for us.
Yeah.
No, it required work.
Yeah, no. I would have been just. I mean, we had to put in hours just
Yeah.
to be decent.
Yeah, just to be decent. Which I look back now and like in the grand scheme of things, sports don't really matter. But that really hammered home the work ethic that we both carry into like our jobs today.
Exactly. Yeah, like I wouldn't say lacrosse is lacrosse isn't a big part of my life anymore. I haven't even touched.
I haven't touched a stick since the last practice. College.
Since my last game in college. They're in my garage, but everything that I learned from lacrosse, the discipline, the work ethic, just like doing things that you're not going to want to do, but you have to do them. Those are all huge and valuable lessons that I don't think I would have learned if I didn't try to play lacrosse at the Division I level and play lacrosse.
Yeah, so take a step back from college lacrosse, but our training as we were in high school got more and more serious, and so I went to a private high school for 4 years, and going in, I have talked about this before. I didn't know anybody, etc. And Sean actually, going into my junior year, also came over after some debate whether he was going to just go to the public school or go to the private school. We're fortunate my parents gave us that opportunity at both. And he joins me in high school, which is probably the greatest thing ever because it allowed us to just train together often. And I remember we would have Um, we would do conditioning at 6 a.m.
Well, we would go to next level,
Yeah, next level we would do conditioning on our own.
which is the gym we go to.
Yeah, so we trained at a gym called Next Level. So anytime we reference Next Level, that's us at the gym. So we would go to Next Level at 6 a.m. before school and then be done there at like 6:45. Kind of get to school around 7:15. Meet up with our other buddy Jared, who was also a midfielder, and we would get shots up from like 7:15 to the start of school. Like we'd leave 15, 20 minutes to shower in the locker room. Then we literally just go to school and then have practice after. So it was just nonstop. And then sometimes after practice, actually a lot of times after practice, we would go lift at Next Level.
Yeah.
Actually every day, 5 days a week, we would go lift at Next Level.
Yeah, because the morning workouts, which were insane, they were
Just cardio.
it was different types of cardio, like a lot of, bear crawls, a lot of sled pushes. It wasn't just, running on a treadmill. That was strictly just so hopefully we get wind in our lungs and like makes lacrosse running up and down the field better. But we couldn't just do that and maintain strength because we would turn into toothpicks. So yeah, we had to lift too, which was tough. It was but also looking back on it, like those were some of my best memories. Like joking around afterwards and then like being like, oh my God, we still have to go to a full day of school.
Oh my God.
And just being wiped
sleeping.
out. Like it was fun. But there are definitely times where you're just like, why am I doing this? Like what's the point of this?
Or you'd see other kids like not doing it and you'd just be like,
Why can't I just not do it like them?
yeah.
Yeah.
But the whole time, this goes back to our relationship. Like it wasn't all arguing. Like these moments that we spent together, pretty much all day, driving to school, driving back from school. Sean sleeping in the front seat on the way to school. Sean sleeping in the back seat in the front seat on the way back from school. We were just bonding and getting super, super, super close. And then college came. And I left for college. Sean still had 2 more years of high school.
And I transferred.
He transferred back to public school. Whether or not that was a good decision for him, I don't really know.
I had to leave that private school. I mean, it just wasn't. There was no point in me being there if Marcus wasn't there.
True.
It didn't fit who I was, and all my, really good friends from growing up were back at public school. So I think it was a good decision for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, I'm gone now at college dealing with, the stresses of being both a Division I athlete, what that entails, trying to figure out school, which I was never good at. Like, I'm just not good at school, not good at test taking, but I consider myself pretty smart. And it was driving me crazy, like, the whole concept of you have a teacher telling you how to learn and how to think. And so I'm dealing with that. And Sean no longer has me at home. He's off doing his own thing. So, we would only really see each other on fall break, winter break, stuff like that from college.
Yeah, that was a weird part. That was definitely weird for me. Was like, I think I dropped you off with mom and dad.
Yeah.
And, like, going home, I was just like, oh, this is, like, I'm going to have to do everything alone. Like, I'm going to have to work out in the mornings alone. I'm just going to have to shoot after school alone. I don't have anybody holding me accountable.
I feel like you fell off a little.
Yeah. There was a time where when he first left, where I was just like, you know what, like,
You didn't even know if you wanted to play college sports anymore.
I picked up a part-time job, and I just kind of fell off. Like I always lifted, I loved lifting, but like the lacrosse aspect, I really struggled not having somebody with me to like enjoy the process.
It also doesn't help that you hear me calling home about like this actually sucks.
Yeah.
Like I hate it. Like I want to drop out of college. Like,
Yeah.
So for him to also hear that, it's like, probably for a younger kid, 17, 18 years old, had thought, oh, I want to do this. I want to do this. Then his older brother, who he looks up to, goes and then starts calling home saying, this is horrible. I want to drop out. Like, that probably isn't the greatest feeling in the world.
It was tough. I also just felt bad for you because, I mean, Marcus's high school experience, like, it took him maybe like 2 years to make one friend. And so I was like, here it is, college. It's going to be the same thing, which, I mean, it kind of was in the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean,
100%.
He just isn't, he's not
I'm an
extroverted. Like,
yeah.
He just keeps to himself. He has no real way of getting to know people because I know he wasn't going out and, like, doing the whole social scene in college because, like, he was just like, oh, what's the point of that?
Well, in the beginning, I would spend my Friday nights and Saturday nights on the field shooting because I wasn't good enough at practice and it was driving me freaking insane. So I would go and I would just shoot Friday and Saturday night.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't give a shit because I knew in my head, it wasn't that I didn't give a shit. It was like I knew in my head I wasn't performing at practice the way I wanted to, and that I was going to take time when other kids weren't getting better to get better, to try to close that gap of them being better than me. That's how I looked at it. And so that didn't help my social situation at all. It also didn't help, like, I'm in class. I don't talk to anybody. I don't even want to be in class because I hate class. So, yeah.
So, yeah, these were all things that were coming back to me at the end of the day when he's FaceTiming my parents and I can overhear their conversation. And he's just so mad. He's mad at the world. It seems like he doesn't like lacrosse. He doesn't like school. He doesn't like college. He wants to move home. And I'm just like, okay, this is great. 2 years, like, peak of recruiting. How am I gonna do this now? But yeah, I don't know why I did it. Like, I don't know why I was just like, I should just continue.
You don't know why you didn't think you could?
No, I don't know why I said, like, oh, this sounds so great. Let me continue and work towards going to play lacrosse in college. I just did it.
I don't know either. I remember a conversation we had, and I don't know when it took place exactly, but I remember talking about you having a period where you fell off, like, your actual grind. And I remember I was still coming home in the summer and grinding with Coach Trigg, and he was getting me actually a lot better. And then, like, you weren't going to him or something, and I was like, dude, why aren't you going to Coach Trigg? Like, you know how much better you would be? And then you started going, and you were like, do you remember? And then you said something like, oh, dude, I should have been doing this the whole time. And then I would clown on you for, like, getting your part-time job that you lasted 2 weeks.
And nothing against getting a part-time job.
No,
like,
yeah. That's totally fine, but I didn't think it was him.
It wasn't, it wasn't, it didn't make much sense. And I ultimately had to quit because once my lacrosse schedule just interfered and I was at one point just working literally 8 hours a week. So I was just like, okay, this wasn't smart. But yeah, I was just at one point when Marcus left, I was just like, you know what? I don't want to do this. I'm just going to, like, not do anything lacrosse related. And then Marcus would get mad at me and it made me not want to do it more.
There's a common theme there.
So I just didn't. And then eventually I was like, it's kind of boring not grinding to get somewhere. So I got back into it, but yeah,
it's tough to get out of that rut if you fall into it.
Yeah, it's dangerous. I'm very glad I was able to get out of it because if not, who knows? Who knows where I would have been?
So we've been going for like 30 minutes. So I wanted to take, like, the back half to answer questions and like talk about questions that people had submitted from TikTok.
Okay. I feel like we did not cover.
There's
so much more to cover.
I mean, yeah, but to get to know our entire relationship over an hour show is so tough.
Yeah.
I mean, we could break it up into 2 parts if people have further questions once they listen.
Yeah.
But like, is there anything you want to talk about
No.
specifically?
It's just like I feel like we could have just gone on, and there's so many different layers. But
Yeah, but that's tough.
I mean, yeah, you can't do that in 30 minutes.
That's sure, like, people that have known us for a long time, are still scratching that surface. All right. So the first question is from a user.
Are you gonna answer him first?
I'll like preface the question and let you think about it as I talk about it, and kind of I'll give my thoughts on it as well.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay. I have a feeling they're gonna be pretty similar answers.
Yeah. Well, that's something that I had said. When people listen to us talking, we share a lot of the same mindset and a lot of same train of thought for, topics. So we're very similar in that way. But anyway. The first question was submitted by a user named No Part on No Party, and she asks, "What makes you feel fulfilled?" And I know, for me personally, it's setting a goal, whether pretty lofty or extremely lofty, and then putting in the time required over a period of time to get there. And then once I usually get to a goal, I'm just moving the goalposts. Like, I'll just move it a little bit further away or a lot further away. And it's in that journey that I have now come to realize is what I'm really enjoying about that process. And that like makes me feel fulfilled. Like, especially with Minted and selling the jewelry. Like, when I started, any one thing would make me feel fulfilled, and now it's like I have much bigger aspirations for it, and that will make me feel fulfilled, and then we'll just move the goalpost even more.
Yeah, you guys should have seen him starting. It was like, I was like, oh god, what's good? I thought it was just another one of his grand ideas that was just gonna.
Well, let's talk about that. So Sean is at the mercy of my brain. And the way my brain works is that it never stops. It doesn't stop. It goes while I'm sleeping. I'll wake up with a business idea, and it will be, 6 a.m. I'll walk into Sean's room, and I'll be like, dude, what do you think about this business idea? This is how I think I'm going to map it out. This is the roadmap. This is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to get investment, like stuff like that.
Like 6 a.m.
And Sean will have just been awoken by me, and he'll be like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah, half the time I just won't respond. I'm just like... And I'll just ignore him, and after a while, he'll just stop talking. But it's every time I'll wake up, and it's just like something new happened. Because, he's been up for 2 hours. So, like, he's had all these things going on in his brain, but he just doesn't understand that my brain is not working when I first wake up. So, I mean, it's crazy, and that's why he's much more creative than I am. But at the same time, it seems awfully exhausting to have those thoughts.
Feels it sometimes.
Yeah. So I'm glad I think there's a difference between Marcus and and I feel like I'm very much, when I decide to turn the switch off and just relax, I can do that. Whereas he really struggles to turn the switch off. It's like it's always dimmed. It's always there.
It's like ready to just get flipped all the way on for no reason.
Yeah.
So are you going to answer what makes you feel fulfilled?
So I think it would be, for me, is doing something that actually is meaningful. I understand there's a lot of different things you'll have to do throughout your life that, aren't going to be meaningful or are just a means to an end. But ultimately, like you said, getting somewhere where the work or the passions I have actually make an impact, or I feel like they make an impact. So that I think is the end goal, and that's one of those goals where you say, you keep pushing, you reach a goal, you keep pushing it back. I don't think that goal's ever really reached. I think it will just always be there. Which I think is one of the best types of goals to have. So
it's just nonstop.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unachievable essentially, but that is the beauty in the process.
It's like unachievable, but it's like you can get 95% there.
Yeah.
But you'll never get to that 100%. You'll always be at like 99.9, 99 point, because you're always like, oh, I could do a little bit better. I could streamline this process to make more of an impact. Yeah.
Okay. So we kind of talked about this one a little bit, but a username of B Sharabi, I believe I'm saying that right, asks, what was your college experience and did it compare to mine, as in Marcus? Where did you go to college and when did you decide on law school?
So I actually think Marcus and I's college experience was pretty similar. By the time I got into college, I also had turned into a very much into an introvert. He didn't go out much his freshman and sophomore year, and my freshman and sophomore year, I went to Mount St. Mary's. It's a school in Maryland, small school in Maryland.
Both went to small schools.
Yeah, and luckily it was an hour and a half from our home. So pretty much every weekend, my freshman and most of sophomore year, I would leave on the weekends and spend the weekend at my parents' house and just like do nothing. And I mean, it really hurt my social, like my social status, I guess you could say. But by the end of my sophomore and junior or sophomore year, I really found a group of guys on my team that I really liked hanging out with. And so looking back on it, I would do nothing differently because I have best friends from college that I continue to talk to every day. So yeah, it might have taken a little bit longer, but I'm glad I was like that because you can really take your time, see how people are.
You can vet people a lot easier.
You don't have to jump into like this trying to make friends and then you're just like, oh, I actually don't really like this guy. So I think taking it slow is actually great. And then junior and senior year, I was a little more fun, I guess you could say.
You were like coming back to your high school self a bit,
Yeah.
you know, like, because I mean, in high school, we always called you like extroverted. Like he was pretty much the social butterfly of the family, I would say, because I certainly wasn't. I was like a caterpillar.
We needed to make up for
I was like a hermit crab. Yeah. So you made up for me.
Yeah.
But the ending of that question is, when did you decide on law school?
That's a great question.
Did you decide on law school?
No, I'm like 99% sure I'm going to law school. So I wouldn't even say in college I had decided. I took a course my senior year, which was like an LSAT prep course, because I knew what I was doing I was going to be a paralegal once I left college. It was a 2-year commitment, and I'm currently still doing it. And after that 2-year commitment, a lot of paralegals go to law school. So I was like, it's in the back of my head. At this point, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go, but my sister did the same thing that I did, and she decided not to go to law school. But I would say, probably 90% of the people who are paralegals at my office end up going to law school. So then I got there, and I was just blown away by the people, by the work that was being done, by how much of an impact, these people had on just society, on law. It was very interesting.
Pretty much the world.
Yeah, and they just were so smart that I was so impressed, and am still impressed by all of them. And I was like, this would be something, whether or not I want to do what they're doing or a different type of law is still a question, but I want to be able to look at issues and work how they work.
And they're also just scary smart.
Yes, they're all very, very smart. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Which is good to be surrounded by when you're very young, and like those are your mentors.
Yeah. I mean, I have become so much smarter just by being around them, by reading what they write, by listening to them talk. You don't realize how much that can actually form, like, how
the
you
way
think.
you do things. Yeah.
So yeah, no. I mean, honestly, being here has taught me more then I would say a whole year of college, or
4 years.
maybe more. It's just like it's very special.
So, next question.
Well,
Is what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self? This was submitted by a guy named Killa Killa Ga. I think I'm saying these right. I tried to like write them out as they're pronounced. For me, I figure I'll answer it as well. You know, it's so tough because I feel like I'm in a pretty good place right now, and you know, change any one decision and you can have the butterfly effect of everything else changes down the road, right? So if I could have changed anything, I think it would to be more creative when I was younger. I played the role of like not jock, but just, you know, I didn't explore the creative side of myself at all. And in those creative moments that have come since starting with painting and that, or have been better business ideas that I haven't, or I would never have explored. Also, like fashion in general. Like now I'm pretty deep in it, but if I had started exploring it earlier, you know, I could have developed my taste even more, but it just wasn't something that I ever did, and I wish I did earlier.
yeah, Marcus was very much in the beginning. I feel like just he felt like there was a path and you had to follow it, whereas now he understands completely that there is no path.
You just make your own.
Yeah, it's whatever you want to make of it. I mean, you can certainly follow the path and be very successful, but there's not one path for everyone. What advice I would give to my 18-year-old self? I would say just think about things and think about the consequences. Think about the ramifications of what could happen. You know, you're 18, you think you're on top of the world. You think you can't get in trouble. You think you can do anything you could possibly want. And looking back on it, it's just like focus your mind somewhere else. The stuff that you find when you're 18 and you think is cool and you think, you know, that's all you want to be doing, it's not the case. It's not the case. And I wish I matured earlier. I feel like I definitely matured very late. And I'm still not mature, but I'm working on it.
I think we're a lot more mature than a lot of people.
No, but yeah, I just didn't have a care in the world. I was okay with doing.
I think you struggled to see long term. Like a lot of
Yeah.
people struggle seeing the long term goal and then each individual step you have to make today to get there. And I think you let a lot of, which is normal, the stuff in high school get in the way sometimes, cloud your thoughts of like, this is actually important. When in reality, if you look back on it now, there's no way.
Yeah. And I always think about this question because, you know, if I ever have kids, I have a feeling they're going to be very much like how I was. And I don't want them to go down a path where they make a decision that actually has ramifications that you can't just
That you
get
know
out
they
of.
didn't really want to make.
Yeah.
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 Yes.
So that's a thing where I'm like, I need to be aware of that when I'm a parent.
All right. The next question submitted by O Selgribe. I'm probably botching all of these. Anyway, how do we motivate and push each other to do better? Do we have the same interests in life, and are we competitive? We talked on the competitive aspect. We're still very much competitive. I think it's just a bit different now because we don't work in the same industries, but we both work a lot.
Yeah.
But that's not like us competing. It's just us wanting to be better.
It's not even like a competition thing anymore. It's not like, oh, I want to work more hours than Marcus. It's more we're both doing it, and it's more just we're doing it together now.
Yeah.
And we're just some days we both are just like, this sucks, but like we're never like, you know what, fuck this, let's just quit. You know,
Yeah.
it's never that. So it's different. We don't compete as much. Even in the gym, I wouldn't say we're obviously there's a little bit of competition, but like it's nothing. It's not like we're trying to do more weight than one another
Yeah.
or anything like that.
I mean, I think where we push and motivate each other is like Sean knows that if he doesn't feel like going to the gym, I'm gonna be there ready to go. And if there's a day I don't feel like going to the gym, he's gonna be there ready to go if he wakes up on time. And so like it's that never ending, like there's always somebody holding you accountable because you know the other person's gonna pick the right thing or the hard thing. Very little do we take the easiest way out of anything. Usually it's just doing the hard things. So it's more of an accountability thing than it is a straight like motivating competition type deal.
Yeah, there's no worse feeling than if Marcus leaves for the gym and I'm still laying in bed. I mean, it doesn't happen really.
No, it
doesn't happen because I can't go a day without going to the gym. I just will feel so bad. But like there have been times when he's gone earlier and I'm laying in bed and I'm just like, look, he's back already showered.
Yeah, back when I was going at 5.
I still have to go.
Yeah.
But that usually only happens on the weekends, maybe.
If that.
Yeah.
We're pretty good about sticking to it.
Do we have the same interests in life? Creatively, probably not. He just has a much more creative brain than I do, and I don't necessarily see it. But I'm very interested in what he does. That doesn't mean like I would be able to do it. But I think the overall, like the overarching interest, that yes, we do.
Of success.
Yeah. Yeah, like our mindset.
I think it would be, I think the interests that we share are being, extremely good at our craft, whether yours is law or right now being a paralegal, like you're a go-to person. So for me, if I'm running a business, the business fails on my back. There is nobody doing anything else. I'm doing it all. And all of that is working toward success. And I think, part of it is just wanting to make our parents proud. Like we have a very high achieving family. And
I think
that goes into it.
That's a huge aspect of it. It's just like making our parents proud because they've given us so much that it's like we can't waste it.
Can't squander it. No, they've given us the world.
They've given us way too much for us to be.
And they've made way too many sacrifices.
Yeah.
For us to be here and screw it up.
Yeah. Looking back on it, I always think about if I was them, would I have made that decision and like done what they did for us? I'd be like, that'd be hard. That'd be really hard. And it was never even a question on their minds. They were like, all right, like whatever you guys need, we'll give it to you. Because if you're going to work for it, you better work hard. And if we don't see you working for it, then we're not going to give it to you.
And this doesn't count for like physical materialistic items.
Oh,
like
no.
This was, we will pay money for the gym and, your sports related stuff or anything you want to put your mind into. But it wasn't like, oh, we're just going to go buy you a new car or stuff like that.
It was never like, if you do well on your report card, we'll give you money. It wasn't that. It was never
that was expected.
It was like, if you want to do well on your report card, do it for yourself.
Yeah. And make your future a little bit better.
Yeah. Like, only you can do that. You shouldn't be incentivized by the money.
Yeah.
Yet.
Which now we are.
Yeah. Well.
What is your perspective on fitness? How did you get into fitness and how did you approach training? We kind of talked about this already, but I think for me, one thing a lot of people don't know is when I first got to New York and I was actually modeling, I pretty much stopped lifting and I just became a distance runner, which is where my base of distance running is from. Like that's the reason I can kind of run the way I do now is that I stopped lifting. I just started running, like logging crazy miles and lost a lot of my muscle mass. And so I just recently started getting back into lifting and it would drive Sean crazy. But now like we're back to lifting together again.
Yeah.
Other than that, we've been training, together since we were really young.
Besides that period sucked for me because it was just like I couldn't even lift with him because
And he
was
couldn't
so
run with me.
frail, and I couldn't run with him because I couldn't keep up. So like we just didn't like he would be in the gym and he was just a noodle.
Yeah. But it goes back to what you said in the beginning. Like in my mind, I had my mind set on like I want to be a distance runner that can run fast.
And
that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, you also thought, as a model, you had to be a certain type of
Certain body type.
thin.
Yeah.
And he was really striving for it in a way that I looking back on it, I think was unhealthy.
Yeah.
And luckily, he's not doing that anymore.
Yeah. Okay. Top 3 law schools. You can just hit them quick. You don't have to talk much about them. But Hope and Faith 69 asks.
I'm not gonna say anything because you need to get a certain LSAT score, and there's way too many variables. It'd be great. I'm very interested in the West Coast. I think it'd be cool. I've actually need to go and visit the West Coast. So schools on the West Coast would be cool. Being in New York City would be very cool. And the schools in New York City are amazing. So I would say that. Maybe staying around DC is an option. It's just depending on where you go, certain things can come of it.
Yeah.
If you want to be in DC, you don't have to go into politics, but if that's what you want to do, you should try to go to DC. New York is a much different lifestyle than anywhere else. It's just grind. So you have to prepare for that. Either any law school is going to be incredibly challenging just from talking to the people where I work. But it's something I need to look more into to really, really be able to answer this question and get my LSAT score where I want it to be. Hopefully.
Which he hasn't even started studying for,
Yeah,
so it's tough to say.
Yeah.
Advice for people regarding investing: play it risky or stick to the safe routes. Asked by Totai. I'll talk about this a little bit because it's a subject I know a bit more about than Sean, and I actually think I told you what you need to invest in as far as managed funds for your 401k. Didn't I do that breakdown?
I'm pretty sure Mark has actually set my 401k up.
Yeah,
sure
I did actually.
Yeah.
So the way I look at it is we're both extremely young, and we both live by the notion of putting 20% of our paycheck into our 401k. We don't see the money; it's just there. It will always be that case. And so we started that pretty much as soon as we started working.
That also stemmed from my dad. My dad is obsessed with 401ks.
Yeah, he's obsessed with investing 401k. My mom is also,
Just
a
great
good
with
saver.
money.
Yeah. And so being young, you have time on your side. So the way I told Sean to look at it and the way I look at it is take a lot of risks when you're young to try to get those outsized returns. And then, you taper it into less risky as you get older. Obviously my dad's not in crazy risky stuff because he's older. So that's kind of that.
Yeah.
I would say go risky if you're young. You have time on your side.
And never be risky with money that you aren't okay with losing. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
Just from I'm an idiot and I tried trading stocks. But I was never investing with money that I was I better not lose this or else I might not be able to eat my next meal.
Yeah.
So just be careful. Shit's confusing.
Yeah, it's not easy. We have 4 more questions and we have about 6 minutes, so we'll kind of rip through these. What keeps you going as for your job, staying healthy, self-improvement, and when do you think you think that started? By Ivy Macias, I think. For me, I think if I were to put a date on when it started, probably this is going to sound crazy to a lot of people, but around 15, 16 is when I really started to get my locked in mentality of envisioning where I need to be when I'm 30. And I think it's tough for people to realize what I'm saying when I say that, but having Sean here is a great resource because he can talk to it about how I've been so forward thinking my entire life that it was if experience, like if the stuff that I'm doing today isn't going to help me get there, I don't want to do it. I don't care.
Yeah. Marcus has always been like that. I mean, it's strange. But I mean, he was very much like a kid and could, liked all the stuff that everyone likes, but at the same time, he was also like an old grandpa. He was just he was very mature for his age, but also very immature for his age.
Yeah, no, Sean's right, 100%.
I would say probably like 19 was when I figured it out. It took me a while. It took me a while.
Who's the better athlete? I think it's relative now.
Yeah.
And then we always kind of like battled that out when we were younger. But now, like, Sean's stronger than me in every single lift. But I will dust him in distance.
Yeah, Marcus kid. I'm getting there. But
yeah, like I want him to be able to run with me.
He always has more in the tank. I just my tank. I get like 15 miles per gallon. He gets like 35.
Yeah,
I can do it. But he'll always have more in the tank. I think it's those legs.
It's the legs. Like, I don't know. Yeah, but like I said, Sean's stronger than me, and it could be partially that like I had wasted all that muscle when I was training for distance, but at the same time, like you were getting stronger than me when you were in college anyway. So,
that was also I think I was just so determined because for most of my life I was weaker than him because being 2 years younger, like you're trying to claw back at those 2 years, and you're never actually going to be like equal until you both are fully through like puberty.
Yeah, and you're like, full muscle development.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it's not like crazy far off. Like we can still push each other in our lifts, and I'm like slowly closing that gap. So there will be a point where we can finally start to push each other in lifts, up to the 5-pound range, which will be fun again.
Yeah.
But I mean, we still lift together daily. It's not like we're changing the weight that much.
No. It's also like it doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't. All that matters is that we're like,
I mean,
getting
worst thing that we have to do is change some of the weights. It's really not a big deal. It's still fun.
All right. All-time Grail shoe submitted by Maya Jarosevic.
Off-white MCA University blue. Air Force One.
Yeah, that's
where my first stimmy was gonna go.
Yeah,
but I decided against it. I was smarter than that.
Yeah, my all-time Grail. To be honest, I don't really know. I also like those off-white Air Force Ones. I don't really wear like hype sneakers at all, but I just think the colorway on that shoe is extremely clean.
Yeah, I would think you were more of a classical shoe.
Yeah, I mean that's all I kind of wear, and like there's some crazy, like retro Prada and Gucci loafers that I like, but I don't even know like the exact model or anything, so it's not even worth mentioning.
Yeah.
Favorite Jordan 1 submitted by Jaden Graham.
That I have? That's tough.
Do both. You have some good shoes.
I couldn't pick one. I think my first Jordan 1 was the
Obsidian.
Obsidians that Marcus got me for either my birthday or Christmas.
Yeah.
That was like my first introduction. And at the time and then that started my obsession.
Yeah. He has a lot of sneakers, like a lot more than me.
And then the Turbo Greens were shortly thereafter. And then Marcus recently got me the Mochas for Christmas. But yeah, I have what else do I have?
New York City to Paris.
New York City, Paris, and then the Tokyo, like Japan ones or something like that. I have a few others that I don't know the official names of, but my favorite, I would have to go with probably the Obsidians because that was my first one, and they're just so clean. They're just very clean.
Yeah, I like how, I mean, it's like one of the cleanest colorways, but I do kind of hate how played out they're getting with everybody wearing them with terrible outfits.
Yeah, well,
but that's the culture.
However they want to wear it.
Yeah.
It's just driving the price up.
True. They're only going up in value. Well, that's it on the questions. I do want to thank you for coming on, even though I dragged you here.
And also, we're gonna be leaving and going back to the same apartment. But
Yeah. So thanks for hanging out, and thank you all for listening. I appreciate everybody who's tuned in. I appreciate everybody that's kind of, especially on YouTube, like, follow, subscribe, like that whole deal helps the algorithm out a lot, and we've grown a good bit. So I appreciate it, and more content will be coming soon. Cheers.
thanks.